Awesome. If you don't want to see your face on the screen in the recording, please feel free to go off cam. Um, I would like to welcome Evan Leybourn here. Hey, Evan. Evan is the co-founder and head of research of the Business Agility Institute, a fiercely independent research and advocacy organization for the next generation of companies. Evan leads research initiatives, collaborates with corporate members on their stickiest business challenges, and shares insights and how to accelerate business success no matter what the future brings. He's also the author of Directing the Agile Organization and hashtag No Projects, Culture of Continuous Value, as well as numerous Business Agility Institute publications. So he's going to talk to us about tonight about some of the latest trends and insights from the Business Agility Institute. He's actually joining us from Melbourne, so quite a distance away. Definitely a different time zone. What time is it there, Evan?
8:43 in the morning on Thursday.
Yes, I don't think you quite beat the record for us. The record that we had was in New Zealand, which I think is just a little bit further in terms of time
Yeah,
zone.
another 2 hours.
So yeah, we did have somebody from New Zealand at one point as our speaker. So all right, yeah, so we'd love to do an icebreaker. We'd love to hear. I think we got enough people here that we can just kind of do it round robin if everybody kind of raises their hand. And what we're thinking about is, what your name is, kind of give a real briefly, like what is your name, what's your role or position or type of interest in this, and then we want to learn from you what you think business agility is, but we want funny answers only. Okay. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start and then I'll move along to Natalie. And then we'll just kind of take it from there. If everybody raises their hands, I think there's another react button. You can, I don't know if there's a raise hand option here, but we'll figure it out. So why don't we start? Yeah, there's a raise hand. Awesome. Good. All right. So I'll start. My name is Ken Roberts. I am I'm a coach, a business agility promulgator and scrum master, and I've done a bunch of different things in my life and career. Business agility, what is it? Business agility is being able to take your dog and run them through a maze, but make money off of them. That's what turns it into a business. So it's pet agility that you bill for. That's what business agility is. All right, Natalie, go ahead.
Thank you. So my name is Natalie Liakova. I am, I do wear several hats, but most importantly for this audience probably is I'm a recruiter, helping to fill positions in New Jersey. Definitely connect with me. And I'm located in Pittsburgh, if anyone wonders. In terms of the business agility, I'm not a funny person, so I will not come up with a joke. It's not my thing. I believe business agility is when decisions are made quickly, but it's quite a rare thing to see, unfortunately, but we all hope that we can make it better. So,
Yeah,
who's,
just put one word in front of it. Wrong decisions are made quickly. There you go.
uh, okay, by some people at least, okay?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Adam, you go next.
Okay, Adam Alsop, as I say, agile coach, product owner, product manager, etc. I kind of have the title of the agile product and data sensei. So I do a lot of teaching and mentoring as well. Business agility, I would describe as being able to skillfully hop from the top of one bar on a bar chart graph to another without falling down into the pit between.
You go. All right, Adam, who should go next?
Let's go with uh, Brett.
Hey, Brett.
It's kind of hard to do the thing in the classroom where you're like looking away from the teacher and they don't call on you. So, okay, so me, product management. been kind of most of my lifetime in startups, so kind of early in all kinds of different organizations and helping them grow, and have worn many hats, but you really kind of focus on the product building side of things and get the most enjoyment out of that. I mean, to me, I don't have a great funny thing about business agility, but I do think, and I think, Natalie, you alluded to this a little bit. To me, business agility is, the decision-making process might take a little longer, but when good ideas are smacking you in the face, the business itself doesn't get in the way of delivering on that great idea. Like that to me is the biggest thing that is true agility, right? It's not, yes, it might be very difficult to get agreement and consensus, but once you're ready to go, you don't waste a ton of time and miss the opportunity. So that's my take.
So thank you, Brett. Who do you think should go next?
Uh, Aaron?
And Adam, I
Hi.
do like your comment. Why? News anchor. Why? Because of the name or some other
Yeah,
reason?
there's a very,
The
very, very
presence.
famous news anchor called Brett Baer.
Oh,
Oh, don't talk about how that's destroyed any chance of me showing up high in Google and all kinds of things. So
Oh.
a bane in my existence, but yes, that is correct.
Aaron, I think you're next.
Yep. No, thanks. So I'm responsible for sales enablement globally for the company I work for. I come out originally out of a product side in ERP when I first started decades ago. Then I moved into solutioning and services, professional services, and then eventually sort of managerially P&L. And then I made a hard cut about 7 years ago to go basically hard into sales, which I supported or would always be around it. But and I've found myself basically enabling the sales functions and trying to bring as many of the, let's say, innovations from behind the organization that we've all been working with, whether they're lean, agile, product first, customer center, whatever, to the sales functions. My view for agility is sort of the same view I had when I first did sort of lean work, because I did manufacturing ERP. I built some modules for a big ERP vendor, and then worked at Honeywell after. Is that you center everything around the customer, right? So customer value, voice of the customer, and the centricity of the discovery in the customer is everything. And then you create the agility, your business agility, and your shaping of all your processes and operations around the needs that you need to meet to sustain your customer centered view and the customer success.
Awesome.
So that's kind of my back. And then I guess agility jokes. I actually, you know what? A good one is this. I'm almost figured out how to take a lot of all of the product and customer or all the product led, tech led type language and have to repackage it for sales and front centered front office type people because they freak out on any of the stuff that we would talk about. But if I repackage it, it sounds a little more normal, which has actually taught me in an honest way that we have a lot of bad, clean language in the technology sphere. I always knew that, but I mean, it's when you run into like normal people, like your cousin who has like a sales job, or your sister or your brother or whatever, that maybe figure out how to speak in things people actually understand. So that's been that. So anyway, sorry.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Who should go next? We have Peretz, Arsene, Mikhail, and Mo.
Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Arsene.
Hey, hello. Yeah, my name is Arseny. I'm based in Virginia. I've been in IT for almost 2 decades. I started as a software engineer, then a project manager, and recently I've been working as a Scrum Master. Lucky for me, now I work remotely, so I don't need to go to office every day, which is good. speaking about the business agility, I didn't come up with a joke about that. But
That's fine.
yeah, from my understanding, in the very simple words, it would be maybe I would say like it's adaptation of your business to challenges of nowadays, something like that.
Got it. Okay. Fritz, how about you go next?
I'll go next. My name is Peretz Whitman. I come to the Princeton Agility collection of good people to from Software Quality Assurance. At the moment, I'm looking for work as a Scrum Master or as a healthcare analyst. I have a little bit of confusion as what I'm supposed to be doing next, and either I'll find a job in one or the other. As far as business agility in an amusing take, the reason we call it business agility is so that the CEO and the C-suite can understand software doesn't produce stuff overnight, even though the electrons go really fast.
There you go. Okay. We'll go with Mo next. Are you able to play in?
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm having problems with Zoom today.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mo. My background is in quality management and Lean Six Sigma and all that cool stuff. I discovered this meetup today, and it had the word business and agility, and I thought, I'm not quite sure if this is all tech, but I'm gonna attend and see. The only sort of kind of joke I have about business agility is culture eats agility every single time. Business agility has never happened for me. Always chasing people to come to consensus, and that beats agility every single time. That's been my experience. It's not a joke, but it's
True.
that's been like my reality in the quality management world.
I think Mikhail said they weren't available to get offline. So Evan, it's your turn.
All right. Good morning, or good day. Evan Leybourn, for my sins. I'm the co-founder of the Business Agility Institute. And I think I would say that the common joke around business agility, it's where the CEO changes the logo of the business every time they have a new idea. The good old-fashioned rebrand. So, may I? Fantastic. I am going to go slightly off script based on a little bit of the conversation and the introductions. So I will talk about business agility, but I want to take 2 or 3 minutes and I want to share a different piece of research. So we were commissioned, this is the end of 2023. We were commissioned by the Scrum Alliance to do a study on skills in the new world of work. Let me actually change the screen share. There we go. All right. So what we found, and again, I'm going to do this lightning fast, is, and again, this is data that's almost 2 years old now, but trends are more or less the same. When we look at roles, not skills, they are different things. There was a high demand for roles like Scrum Master, product owners, project managers, so forth. Business analysts, still in high demand. And organizations are saying they can't find enough. So the supply and demand trend is such that the organizations are looking for more, and they say they can't find it in the market. Now, this is a little bit of a dichotomy because at the same time, there was a dichotomy, a weird combination, because at the same time, these organizations saying we can't find Scrum Masters were receiving between 70 to 300 applications per roles, and candidates themselves were saying, I can't find a job. Right? So how is it possible that supply and demand are both high? It's technically not possible. But what we found is what we called the importance of and. When we were interviewing hiring managers, what came up a lot in conversation was this idea of, we don't just want a Scrum Master, we want a Scrum Master with tech skills, or with data skills, or with industry skills like healthcare skills. And so the need for what was historically common professional Scrum Master, dedicated single mono-focus Scrum Master, is no longer, or at least was no longer, and again, anecdotally is no longer hugely in demand. Now, this was true beyond just Scrum Master roles. Obviously, this piece of work was commissioned by the Scrum Alliance, so we did focus on Scrum Masters and Product Owners as roles, but we looked at the entire space. What you will be pleased to know is that the skill of what we call agile acumen, right, which is the ability or the skill of applying agility, was the second highest functional skill set in every role. So whether it was an analyst, whether it was a project manager, whether it was a marketer, the expectation is that they could work with agility. So a lot of, and for those who are, say, agile coaches, this was a big challenge, because whilst the demand for that professional skill, that professional role wasn't there, the demand for coaching and agility was in high demand in other roles. And so part of this, what I would call commoditization of a lot of the agile professional industry. And again, anyone who says agile is dead, my personal opinion is they're frustrated because it's harder for them to sell work, to either sell themselves or to sell consulting or training, because this is a commoditization. It is a different market for agile professionals. As such, but agile isn't dead, because the demand, the skill sets, is a fundamental skill set in demand across the vast majority of organizations. Now, I will say that there has been the pendulum has swung slightly back towards needing more agile professionals. We're seeing more demand for specialist roles. And this is just the usual, the pendulum hasn't quite found the new equilibrium. They swung too far, and then suddenly, okay, we've got to come back a little bit. And so the pendulum continues to swing. So I can obviously talk more about that if there are questions around any of that. And obviously the research is publicly available, and you can see the research and see all the wonderful things that we found about. Oh, and I should note there are 3 reports. There is the Skills in the New World of Work report, which was the first one. That was the general report. And then there were 2 supplemental reports, one specifically for Scrum Masters and one specifically for Scrum Masters. So you're welcome to download. I think the supplemental reports, I think they're only on the Scrum Alliance website. I don't think we have them on our website. On our website, you don't need to give us your email address to download anything, but on Scrum Alliance, you do. So, but if anyone wants a copy of those reports without giving Scrum Alliance their email address, happy to share. Before I get onto the main topic, any questions about what I've just rapidly shared there?
Yeah, I can't resist asking about that 62% and the 61% on the left side. On that little chart you did with what was the human scale versus the functional? Yeah, that one, where it says other human skills, 61%, and communication was 62%.
So the other human skills, do I have a slide? Bear with me.
Well, I'll just take a couple examples, actually, Evan. That I was just curious to know. It seemed like that's a lot. That's a 62% a big number, and it might have been figured in, you know, some detail.
So bear with me. I'm just going to,
Sure.
I'll actually bring up the report for 1 second.
I don't mean to create a big distraction from your main
No,
presentation.
no. It's totally fair. So that's a big number because it's amalgam of a lot of little numbers. Um, no, that's the period.
If you want to hold off until the end, that would be fine too.
Yeah, I will dig that out because for some reason, why can't I? Oh, that's because it's here. Never mind, I found it. So here we were looking at there we go, human skills. So these were all the skills that we were looking at. So this would include some of like the personal accountability, teamwork, time management, organizational skills. So a lot of these sub skills here would fall under that 62%. So it's a large number of small numbers, or a lot of small numbers adding up to that 61%.
Okay, thanks.
And if anyone wants a copy again, you can download it from the website or just message me and I'll send you a copy.
Thank you.
All right. So this is going to be discussion, interactive. I'm going to try and make it as engaging as we can. There are sort of 3 key threads I'm going to pull. Right? And we're going to pause for like specific Q&A after each thread. But at the same time, we are going to sort of try and sort of keep it to, if you have questions, just ask, don't wait. Right? We are going to try and make this as engaging as possible. And to be blunt, you will get out of it what you put in. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about certain uncertainty, the only thing that you can be certain of. And this is a very powerful concept because we often talk about, and you'll hear me say over and over again, that it's not a question of what will the future bring, but rather a question of no matter, or not a question, an affirmation, a statement of no matter what the future brings. And there is this ocean, there's massive divergence between an organization's desire and their ability to make that reality, that no matter what the future brings. So we're a research organization. We've studied thousands of organizations, and by and large, the issue is not technology. By and large, the issue, the constraint to agile is not, the constraint to agility is not agile. Organizations get in their own way. They seek stability where there is none, certainty where uncertainty is the only certain thing. Organizations will innovate at the bleeding edge, but they won't innovate in the core. And we want to help organizations understand, and our mission as an organization is to help organizations understand how to bridge that ocean, how to turn an ocean into a creek, how to make it possible. So let's start with a bit of a pop quiz. Right? I want your opinion. Right? Is this business agility or not? You can put it in the chat. You can come off mute and speak out loud, but we're going to do this very quick. All right, first question. We can change our strategy whenever we need to, as long as it comes from the CEO.
No.
No, correct. Not business agility. We know we're adaptive because we can reorganize our structure every year, sometimes twice if we're feeling spicy. No, yes, Ken, Adam, correct. An adaptive structure is agility, but reorganizations usually are not. We have the courage to say the plan is no longer makes sense, even if the McKinsey PowerPoint was really good. Gary, yes. Correct. Yeah, that's it. We adapt. Quickly, to improve responsiveness, we've empowered our teams to escalate all decisions to the steering committee. No, that's it. Empowering teams is easy as long as they only make decisions we agree with.
No.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's why that's the last one. Most people feel that one. And these are the issues. Organizations create agility within the system where it's easy for them. Now, we're a research organization. This won't be the first time this appears on the screen, but a request. The Business Agility Report survey technically closed yesterday, but I'm going to keep it open for another day. So if you can take a moment to share your insights. Usual research, like boilerplate. We will ask for company name. You don't have to provide it. We only use the company name to match records between different, so if two people from the same company respond, that way we can basically match the record, then it is deleted. Right? It is a completely anonymized report. This is the eighth year we've done it. So you can look at the previous reports, not a single company name has ever been mentioned. It is completely anonymized. We will ask for your name and email address, and we only use that to send you the report at the end. I mean, there's a question to, do you want to join the mailing list? But unless you click yes to that, you'll receive the report, and that's it. I will put this up at the end again, because as I said, it closed yesterday, so the more data, the better. All right, business agility. Let's look at some of the good examples. All right, Netflix. At Netflix, teams can greenlight a $1 million project without sign-off or executive approval if they believe it aligns with strategy. At the core of Netflix's culture, right, governance, is 5 words: act in Netflix's best interest. And it's this kind of trust that unleashes innovation. Right? DBS Bank. DBS Bank can, actually, I'll tell the story here. So a couple of years ago, DBS Bank learned a very important lesson about customer centricity. They were the lowest rated in terms of customer satisfaction bank in Asia. So they were going through a series of process improvement events, PIEs. And this is a noble goal. Right? They started with the lost credit card process. It used to take 5 days to receive a replacement credit card. Now, that's too long. Right? Now, they went through a complex process. They did all the right things. They interviewed customers. They interviewed the call center. They redesigned this new process and got it down to the same day or next day. This is great. Then they spoke to the customer and they said, "Ma'am, you've just been through our new lost credit card process. How was it?" And she was like, "Great. It was fantastic. Thank you very much. Where's my bank card?" Because she hadn't lost a credit card, she'd lost a wallet. Right? And this was an aha moment for DBS Bank, where they suddenly realized that your customer doesn't care about your internal structure. They don't care that core banking is a separate business line to credit cards. They don't care that wealth is separate with separate processes. So they started shifting towards customer journeys and basically built an internal mantra: make banking invisible. Right? As Paul Caban told me, he was the chief data and transformation officer at the time. He told me it's like nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm going to do banking today." Right? So make banking invisible, make it just easy, implicit, hidden. And within 3 years, they went from the lowest to the highest customer satisfaction rating. Right? Moving on. Bayer Pharmaceuticals. The DBS story, that's a 12-year-old story now. Right? Bayer, this was last year. Right? When the new CEO came in, and I'm drawing Bill Anderson came in last year, Bayer lawsuits and a whole bunch of other they'd lost customers, there were lawsuits, they were in trouble. And Bill said, this is a culture problem. So he stripped out 5 layers of management. Managers went from having an average of 5 direct reports to 15, in some cases up to 100. Right? It is impossible to micromanage at that point. Right? You have to trust your teams. You have to empower your teams. And the results speak for themselves. They've cut drug filing times in half. One team won back their largest customer who had dropped them as a provider. And that team made all the decisions, dropped the plan, did everything they needed without a single executive sign off or approval or validation. They just did it and they won back the customer. No? What about in lawyers? Lawyers are about as unagile as they get, right? Well, the law firm, the internal law firm at Itaú Unibanco in Latin America, did good old-fashioned cross-functional teams, right? Something that we know and love and have been talking about for decades, right? Lawyers traditionally, as like a lawyer owns a case, right? Cross-functionality, collaboration is unheard of, right? They shifted, just simple cross-functional team. They adopted Scrum, which, I mean, normally we don't talk about agile outside IT, but they adopted a lot of Scrum practices. And within 6 months, productivity, as defined by the number of cases dealt with, went up 175% and over 900% in 3 years. So the results definitely speak for themselves. So the question to everyone here, I think Adam's kind of put an answer to the question in the chat, but this is a question, not rhetorical. What do they all have in common, and what's stopping you? What's stopping your organization from making those decisions, from doing those things, from being able to spend $1 million without approval? Adam says in the chat, trust and empowerment. And that's a big one.
Yeah, I think it's fear.
Fear.
Fear, yeah. You know, the business I'm currently working with, it's regulatory, and they've been fined due to various issues. So, you know, they're afraid to move, you know, afraid to empower. They want to put more controls in place rather than kind of releasing a little bit. So.
Agreed. Fear is a big one. Anyone else like to share an opinion?
Yeah, I'll go. In my experience, it's also being the internal silos, which relates to the area of trust. And it's almost as if we're separate countries under one umbrella. It's very difficult to move across, up or down, sideways. So yeah.
Absolutely. Spot on. Adam.
Yeah, I would say it also depends on the size of the company. The larger the company, the more challenging it is to ever try and change that company culture. And I've worked for, you know, major consulting companies where, forget it, you can't get any kind of change or autonomy at all, because it's just not in their mindset at all. They don't even have an understanding of how to think that way. To other companies that say they want to, but their personnel don't allow for it. So there's no, it still all has to come top down. from people.
Yeah, trust.
Yeah.
And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on, but broadly speaking, we can trace some of these principles back 120 odd years and why companies don't trust their workforce. Last one, Brett.
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, to counter Adam's side of it, I've seen the same thing in small organizations where you have co-founders or a CEO that is uh, all the autonomy is their autonomy, and everyone else is subservient to that, unfortunately. So, and again, a lot of times it's their vision, it's their child, basically, that you're helping them build, but still, it can also get in the way of all the good things that we're just talking about.
Point taken on that, Brett. And it's interesting because it's been I've had people suggest to me that I try and target startups and smaller companies as well, because I'm always the one that's pushing for this sort of thing. And a lot of the companies that I've had engagements with, and like I say, while it may be lip service that they say they want to, they really don't.
So I would add to that if you can, an authoritarian organization, if you can change the hearts and minds of the leader, and then that will unlock the organization. A much larger organizations with authoritarian silos, you've got 50 leaders to unlock. So in some ways, it is easier with those small organizations, but Brett, you are absolutely right. Anyone here who's read Reinventing Organizations, it was fairly popular a couple of years ago. We'll talk about teal organizations. And it uses integral theory and the spiral dynamics, different colors. And they talk about red organizations as being highly authoritarian and teal being flat and collaborative. Now, obviously, in the book, it's flat and collaborative is better. But the reality is, I'm going to be very blunt here, an authoritarian if we take a dictionary definition of agile, not the manifesto, if we take agile is adaptability, right? An authoritarian organization that moves at the whims of its leader can be incredibly agile. It's not a good organization. It's not one that we want to work in, but they can be incredibly agile. And that's partly why when we talk about agility, and I'm going to show you this in a moment, we'll talk about specific capabilities, because it's those capabilities that create agility, not just that, how quickly can you adapt?
Try, as I say, try 600,000 employees in a strictly hierarchical organization.
Yes, I have. Yes, yes, I've been there. I think 400,000 was the largest, but yeah, it's the same order of magnitude. Anyway, let's take a lot of what you've said, and a lot of you coming into this conversation through quality or sales. You have a focus. You have a particular focus. And that's true for most organizations. So I want to introduce you to the concept of theory of constraints. Now, apologies for those of you who know or have read The Goal. I'm just going to take 2 minutes to just introduce the idea of theory of constraints. And my daughter has stolen, I have a toy car on my desk that my daughter has stolen. And I'm just going to use a pen. All right. So theory of constraints. It comes from a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. It's part of the lean manufacturing, Lean Six Sigma, lean world. The book says that in any process, you have a constraining factor. You have a constraint. So let's say that you're building cars on a production line. Nice and simple. If it takes you 5 minutes to install the engines and 4 minutes to install the wheels, how often will you be producing cars? Once every... People are on mute if they're talking. 5 minutes. Now, no amount of transformation on the wheel team is going to make any difference to the throughput of that production line. Now, the corollary to the theory of constraints is that there is always a constraint. Let's say you do transform the you do transform the engine team, and you get that from 5 minutes down to 3. Right? How often do cars roll off the production line? Once every 4 minutes, not 3. Because that extra minute that you saved on the engine has been lost, wasted within the system of the organization, because the constraint has moved to the wheel team, which was once every 4 minutes. Now, the corollary, with apologies to Eli Goldratt, I talk about Evans' theory of agile constraints. An organization can only be as agile as its least agile function, and that's not technology anymore. I started with agile back in 2003. I applied Scrum and XP into a data warehousing business intelligence environment team. And it was great. Don't know if any of you were in data warehousing 20 years ago, but it would take 2 to 3 years to release a product, to release a new data warehouse or a new data mart and so forth. It took a long time. We got that down to a potentially shippable product increment once every 4 weeks. And 4 weeks is a hell of a lot better than once every 3 years. But remember, there's a constraint. We had to wait for a release window because our operations team had a major release window every 6 months. Actually, that's a lie. They had a major release window every year and a minor release on every 6 months. And so at best, we could deploy every 6 months, which means our customer feedback. The whole point of agility is inspect and adapt. Yes, we had things deployed to staging environments. Yes, we had some like the inner circle of customers who could access staging and trial some of the new stuff. But there was no real data in there, because the real data, this was a government organization. I was a public servant. There was data segmentation. We couldn't put real data. So they could test a feature, but they couldn't see the result. So there's our ability to inspect and adapt was not measured in 4-week sprints, but was measured in 6-month releases. Operations was our constraint. Now you got DevOps. What's Amazon's statistic? They can deploy every 11.3 seconds, or used to. It's probably faster than that now. Great. You can deploy in 11 seconds. You can create a shippable increment every 2 weeks, every 1 week. Fantastic. But it still takes you 4 months to get a hiring ticket. It takes you 9 months to get a budget change approved. It takes you 2 months to get through the project control board or the change advisory board. Your agility is no longer constrained by the technology. Now, in your organization, maybe tech is still a constraint. That's fine. But for most organizations, they have reached a point of diminishing returns from their agile transformation. And this, by the way, goes to my comment at the very beginning about the commoditization of agile in the tech space. Tech agile has reached diminishing returns for most organizations, not because they're not doing agile well enough, and maybe they're not, but that's okay. But they're doing agile better than anybody else in the organization. They have greater agility than anybody else in the organization. Could they be better? Absolutely. But remember, this is local optimization. They could get better, but the system can't absorb better. So what's the point? And this is where the commoditization and of agile comes in, as well as the shift towards business agility. And this is kind of the trend that we've seen for organizations. Most organizations will start with agile teams. They will shift towards teams of teams, agile at scale. And this could be a framework like SAFe or LESS or DA or so forth. And then at some point, marketing goes, oh, can we get some of this agility? Sales says, hang on, we've got to have some agility. And by the way, there are specific frameworks for agile sales, as well as frameworks for agile procurement, agile marketing, and so on and so forth. So this agile, capital A agile outside IT, is a movement. But then at a certain point, organizations start to realize that the point of agility, the point of the manifesto isn't the practices, it's not the processes, but rather it's the agility that gets expressed. And they start to ask, how do we as the organization create that agility? And I should say, we also are seeing something that we're starting to coin ecosystem agility, where it's like a network of organizations who are adopting, again, there's a constraint to agility, and that could be a vendor, a supplier, part of your supply chain. Your constraint to agility might be outside your organization. And so that's where the ecosystem comes into play, especially for large, complex products, like building a car. Toyota, Tesla, they don't build the car. They assemble components from a myriad of different suppliers. And so their agility is quite often constrained by things outside their system. Adam, to your point about yet to engage with the company, what's interesting, and so I will slightly challenge this, because you may well be true, but sometimes organizations have an innate behavioral agility in the way that they work. It may not be well practiced, but sometimes there is this innate. But I will also say that most organizations aren't great, and we have the data for that. And I'll show you the data in a moment. But very quickly, how do we define business agility? Very simple. It's not the practices, it's not the frameworks, it's not the processes. There is no framework for business agility. And because organizations are complex adaptive systems, there, by definition, cannot be a framework for business agility. I won't go into complexity theory, but trust me when I say that's not possible. You can learn from other organizations, you can't copy them. But we would define it as the capabilities and the behaviors that affords an organization, your organization, the freedom to do what needs to be done without unnecessary constraint, the flexibility to adapt when circumstances change, and the resilience to get back up when a mistake is made or a decision changes or something goes weird. Right? Here's the magic: to achieve your purpose, no matter what the future brings. 6 words. So it's magic 6 words, no matter what the future brings. That's all that matters here. And so what? What does this mean? Well, let me give you some stats that will be of interest to your boss. Right? Agile organizations make more money. Nice and simple. We know that over the last 7 years, that organizations that saw their levels of business agility decrease saw revenue per employee go up. They still made more money, up by 8%. Organizations that saw increasing levels of business agility over that same period saw revenue per employee go up 31%, right? A 23% difference, right? That's pretty damn good. At the same time, customer engagement scores, that's a lie. Companies don't publish customer engagement scores publicly in general, like they do for financial results. So these are Glassdoor scores, which we use as a proxy for customer engagement. But if we look at these same organizations on Glassdoor, those that saw increasing levels of business agility saw the, would you recommend this organization to a friend, your good old NPS, up by 10%, versus those who didn't went down by 4%. Same with overall Glassdoor scores. Adam, go for it.
I will say this as well, that there is often an issue in the perception, the internal perception of a company's agile maturity. So I've had companies that say, "Oh, we're a level 5, we're gold standard, we're great," and I look at what they're doing and I say, "I wouldn't even grade you at a level 1. Maybe you might be at 1 or 1.5, but you are not a 5."
Oh,
you know, yeah,
that's it. And we do study organizations, and we study behaviors, right? Very specifically, not practices. I don't care if company's doing retrospectives or quality circles. It doesn't matter to me if they've got sprints, Kanban, iteration, something else. They could be doing beyond budgeting, throughput accounting, lean accounting, rolling budgets, or something I've never heard of. If they behave with agility, they have agility. And it's really interesting, and I'll just jump ahead to this one. So those behavior, actually, no, let me just jump way forwards. There we go. So I just mentioned the behaviors. When we study organizations, we look for this series of 84 behaviors. And these behaviors, we know from our research and the work that we've done, define that is what an agile organization expresses. And behaviors are good because if behaviors are observable, mindset, culture, not observable. I can't measure culture. I can measure behavior. And if it's measurable, it's modelable. Right? And so that gives us the ability to study companies. Aaron, you had your hand up.
Oh, yes, sorry. I had a quick question about, do you separate the measurement of any of the agility at the C-suite executive board level, and their, I'd say, combination of those 84, or their appetite, interest,
Yep.
commitment, etc.? Because I found that if like, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome, right? And if the senior leadership has different incentives, we can all be pounding away in Middle Earth, and we're just moving that big round thing with all the tree limbs on it around in circles, right? And I forgot whatever that's called in the movies, but I mean, that's a real fundamental challenge, and I think it's really it tends to be very obscured, right? It doesn't tend to be clear.
It does. So let me give you the broad trends. I don't have a slide for this, so I'm just doing this off memory. So broad trends. By and large, and again, this differs by company, and we do deep studies into companies, but by and large, top executives, and I mean the C-suite, not the board, I'll come to the board in a second, have the highest level of agile behaviors than anyone else in the organization, right? They instinctively learn, they instinctively collaborate, they instinctively adapt strategies. The systems, the governance of the organization that ironically they own and create are often hindering them, and they get frustrated with their own organization. I've had conversations with CEOs who are trying to create agility across the organization, but they're stymied. It's like, why aren't people why don't we have greater levels of agility? And it's like, because the systems that you put into place undermine it. A brilliant example. Oh, so actually, no, hang on. I'll tell you the example in a second. I'll finish the stats first. The board, right, tends to have the lowest levels of agility, right? In part because the board tends to be so removed from the customer and even just the business of the organization. There are movements in some organizations where the board is required, or I should say directors are required to sit in a customer-facing role for one day a quarter or one day every 6 months. So they will sit on a checkout, they will sit on a help desk, so that they can actually engage with and learn from the customers. We also see this with, I used to work for Ambulance Victoria, which is a paramedic organization. And the board, in fact, every non-paramedic, especially the board members, were expected to, and it was optional, it wasn't mandatory, but it was kind of culturally, you should do this, was expected to ride along with a paramedic for a shift at least once a year so that you could understand what they go through. And so that's that employee centricity. Middle managers tend to have, on average, the lowest levels of agility. And so this is your C-2, C-3, down to about like the second level managers. Now, what was interesting is they have the lowest average, but also the highest variance, right? As in the worst of those middle managers are the worst, and the best are the best. So if you've got the good ones, like they're the ones who are going to become CEOs. I'll put it that way. And then you've got the individual contributors who are, in some cases, their levels of agility are shaped by the systems of the organization more so than anything else. And that's the example I'll give you very quickly. We were doing a study for a European financial services organization. And I can't name them because we're under NDA. They came to us and asked if we could help them understand why their collaboration, their ability to act as one, within what the capability here was so low. But it was weird because it was, depending on when we studied them, it was either high or low. Now, this organization spent a lot of time and effort in developing cross-functional teams. They'd broken down silos, their squads and tribes, the usual rigmarole. And they'd done it in what I would consider to be a fairly good way. There was a fairly good culture of we're in this together. People, and this was this was not your normal bank. This was a, I will call them a service provider, and they had a very, very big community culture. So in fact, we actually, when we did the profile for them, we renamed responsive customer centricity to community centricity because that's how they saw themselves. Anyway, so why was it great half the year and terrible half the year? Now, like I said before, companies are complex adaptive systems. Social sciences, which behavioral science, is generally, there's never one answer. It's a complex problem with a complex answer. This is one of the few times where there was one answer. It was very simple. This organization that put so much effort into collaboration and teaming and working together was using, the HR department was using force distribution stack ranking for performance management, which, if you remember, for those of you, that's the bell curve. As a manager, my manager had 3 exceeds expectations, 3 below expectations, and everyone else meets expectations. So you have a team, a cross-functional team that's working together towards a common goal, and then all of a sudden, and this is financial services, so your bonuses are based on the rank or your performance management score. But all of a sudden, as an organization, it's like, oh, sorry, as a team, it's like, why did they get exceeds expectations? We were working together on this. Right? Why am I below expectations? Right? I'm going to get that bonus next year. Right? And it broke almost overnight. Collaboration. Now, memories are short and people started working together and it started to build back up slowly over the course of the year and then killed again the next year. Now, the sad end to this story is their head of HR. It's not that she refused to believe me. She didn't believe there was any other way that you could do performance management. Even though I actually had to show her SHRM, the Society for HR Managers, literally no longer recommends stack ranking. There are other forms of performance management in her own industry association, but her mental model was fixed. It's like, this is how you do performance management. There's no other way. I was like, unfortunately, not much more I can do for you. And that's where that middle management really often becomes a sticking point. Yeah, Mo, diabolical practice. Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of a ripple effect they have across an entire organization, isn't it?
It's a system.
Yep.
Right? It's a complex system, but it's a
Yep.
system. You are entirely correct. And this is why, and I hate to cast aspersions on the agile industry, because I've spent the first quarter of my, or half of my career deep in the capital A agile industry. But we did ourselves a disservice. We locally optimized technology to a point where like the value, right, is lost in the rest of the organization. And few organizations, to Adam's point, have done this well. So I'm going to talk about AI in a moment, but just very quickly, I'm not going to read the slide. You can read the slide as much as I can. the key here is these are the capabilities that we look for to determine if an organization has business agility, right? Are they a learning organization, like the culture? And I think we're working on a new version of this. It's not going to change drastically, but just some refinements to the language. So engaged culture becomes high performance culture and things like that. And I will note, and the very, very beginning, and forgive me, I forget who mentioned it, but there's no jargon here. There's no, we worked with a number of senior leaders and executives in defining these concepts, because we had the data to say, so they act as one, or funding work dynamically. But what we wanted to do was is make sure that these were words that an executive would understand. Right? Now, act as one is probably the closest we get to jargon, but the reason why it was acceptable is certainly going back to the 5 or 6 years ago when we were building this. Most organizations had like a one organization, a one IBM, a one Microsoft, a one this, a one that. So act as one was a concept in the Zeitgeist. Anyway, so we've got the cultural capabilities that we want to see. We've got the customer centricity that we want to see in organizations. Do individuals, are they encouraged to make decisions that preference the customer over the company, knowing that that's what will preference the company in the long run? The leadership capabilities. Now, there's a lot in leadership here, and there's a whole world of leadership capabilities. But we really focus on these 3 areas as distinguishing features of good, agile leaders. And the one I will highlight, because it's my favorite, is empower with accountability. Our industry often talks about creating accountability, creating empowerment or autonomy or agency, but it's got to be tempered with accountability. Empowerment without accountability is laissez-faire. Accountability without empowerment is command and control. There's got to be a balance. The flexible operations domain is by far my favorite domain because I'm boring. This is the domain of governance, right? The operations of the business. Can you move people and move funds to where they need to be without impediment or delay? And the ability to balance governance and risk. We literally did we just ran a micro course on what we call rules without roadblocks that was designed to teach leaders and change agents how to design governance processes with agility. Governance is good. Problem is, most organizations are over-governed. They're spending $5 to save $1. And I used to be a consultant. I've had a career. I used to work for IBM for a few years. And IBM's travel policy, right? It was complicated and long, but it boiled down to get your manager's approval and buy the cheapest flight. I was the practice lead for Asia Pacific. My boss was the global lead. We were very senior. My boss sometimes took, through no fault of his, I sometimes got approval to travel the day before. Now, I can tell you that the flight I bought was a lot more expensive, and it's all economy class, by the way. Like we might have been leaders, but there's no business class. Certainly not in IBM at the time. Not for us. But I spent a lot more on those flights than I calculated one day. It was almost 3 times what I could have spent. The other piece of information there is I was trustworthy. I never once got declined. Now, the alternative to approval-based governance is audit-based governance. And this is the sort of thing that Netflix does. Right? Remember, act in Netflix's best interest. Right? You can buy a plane ticket. You don't ask for approval. But if you spend $10,000 on a plane ticket, your boss is going to call you. It'll get flagged. You get called into your boss's office to explain. One of 2 things. One, it was the only flight that was available. You had a client meeting the following morning. You had to be on that flight. Great. You did the right thing. Not a problem. 2, you made a mistake. Right? Now, here's the thing about airline flights, especially the expensive ones. You can get refunds. Right? That person's never going to make that mistake again, cultivating a learning organization. And there's no punitive, there's no punitive punishment here. It is a lesson, but it's not a penalty. Right? And So, and the organization can get their money back, or at least a travel credit, which for any decent sized organization will burn through that travel credit within 30 seconds. So at the end of the day, spending $5 to save one. So this is what we mean about balancing governance and risk. We want governance. Governance is good, but it's got to be the right kind of governance. And then lastly, very, very quickly, is this value-based delivery. So this is looking at the ability to, this is agile. Can you deliver the right work in the right way at the right time to the right people? So Mo's got deja vu. What about some global trends? Like I said, we study companies. By and large, most organizations are terrible in their operations space. Fund work dynamically and balancing governance and risk are almost always the lowest of the low when it comes to business agility. I should say this data is from last year, and last year saw an upward spike in agility. The level of disruption and adaptation in organizations meant that these are higher than previous years. The survey that I'll send another link out shortly is going to be for this year's, and that report will come out end of October, hopefully. Now, broadly speaking, cultural capabilities, there's been a lot of investment in things like psychological safety, a lot of investment in customer centricity. So we're seeing the cultural customer-centric behaviors come out reasonably well, but the leadership ones, and the value-based delivery ones, they're kind of ordinary, kind of average. So by and large, most organizations, they're not great. These are not high scores. There are some amazing organizations out there, but not great. So before I shift into the last few minutes into AI, questions, comments, or thoughts about anything that I've shared so far?
Is your talk going to include the impact of AI?
Yep, just in a moment.
Okay. Sorry.
Who else has questions?
Yeah, could you just explain a little bit about the 6 versus the 5 and the 4, what those numbers represent?
So the Business Agility Report is a global survey of hundreds, if not, I think we've got 2,500 organizations in total, of how they have responded. Now, what we're looking for is behaviors. So if you remember those 84 behaviors, what we're looking for is how an organization expresses these behaviors. So the global survey is fairly short, but we do deep dive studies on organizations where we will do a deep analysis of their behaviors and their business systems, like their policies and their procedures, like the performance management process. And that gives us the depth of insight, whereas the survey, the one that I've shared for you, will give us the breadth. And in combination, again, we just do some statistical modeling on how well these behaviors are expressed across organizations. So do we see them? How well, how much do we see them across the organization? And so the numbers is that numeric representation of that. So it's out of 10.
Okay, out of 10. All right, now I got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Mo raised as had a comment. I don't know if there's a question.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just jumping in. I couldn't find my hand raising function.
Oh, good. All right. So let's talk about the topic that everyone here is worried about or excited about, and perhaps both at the same time. Right? Can you move at the speed of AI? So earlier this year, we published a report, I'll put the link in the chat shortly, on AI as a force multiplier. Now, let me talk about the benefits of AI first. Right? Number one, of the organizations who saw a benefit, and there were a large number who didn't see a benefit, right? They saw benefits in these 8 areas, right? customer availability or business growth or operational efficiency, product development speed, and so forth. Now, AI itself isn't a benefit. It's not, there's no benefit of AI. AI's benefit or impact is on other things. AI makes product development more effective, or it makes decision-making more effective, or greater customer availability. So that's why we define this as a multiplier, right, of what they had versus where they are now. And again, this is not every organization. These are just the ones that saw a benefit. So generally, we saw between a 1.2 and a 3.2 times improvement. So the question becomes, what's the difference between 1.2 and 3.2? What's the difference between an organization that saw a tiny benefit to those that saw a large benefit? Now, broadly speaking, again, this is theory of constraints. We identified the constraints. You will notice that of the top 6 constraints, only one is technical in nature, poor data quality. The rest of the constraints relate to the business system that the AI technology sits within, right? So long budgeting cycles came up a lot through the interviews and through the studies of the organizations. What we found there was that AI was creating a lot of opportunity, right? New products, they were identifying potential markets, but the organization's ability to redeploy funds, right? It was taking 9 months, right? And so if it's going to take you 9 months to move funds, and yet the AI is coming with new opportunities every 6, every 6 months, no, every day, every couple of days, then, I mean, that's a problem. Decision-making, which includes prioritization, by the way, prioritization sits inside that. The ability to actually prioritize effectively, highly problematic. The ability for leaders, if AI is going to create a 3 times improvement in productivity, can your leaders make decisions 3 times faster? Simple as that. The answer was no, right? Most organizations, they can't. So let's go back to those same capabilities. AI sits in the same wonderful little nexus that Agile did back in the day. The promise of AI is the same as the promise of Agile, right? It was going to make the ability to create products faster, higher quality, all those sort of wonderful things. And just like Agile got lost, or the benefits of Agile got lost in the organizational bureaucracy, so too do the benefits of AI. What we've seen from the research is that these capabilities in rank order are the ones that the organizations with the higher force multiplier ratings were significantly better at these capabilities, specifically learning. That first one was the leader of the pack. Organizations that had the ability to cultivate a learning organization that could run experiments, that had a culture of try, test. And learning isn't education, by the way. I'm not talking about training. I'm talking about a learning organization. That is made a huge difference to an organization's ability to be effective or to see a return or a higher return on AI. Right? Now, going to run out of time, but let me talk about the ones that didn't see a return. Right? What about those organizations that saw a 0x multiplier or a 1x multiplier or a 0.8x multiplier, right, who actually got worse? AI in its current incarnation, and again, ask me in 5 years and this may change, but today, organizations that invested in AI to automate their workforce almost never saw a positive return on investment. Organizations that used AI to augment their workforce, they're the ones who saw a benefit. But there's a shift. If you are part of an AI augmented workforce, that means the role of the human has to change. And so we talk about moving from creator to composer. Those developers, those marketers, those accountants are no longer creating work, but they are composing work through AI. Now, the bouncing ball continues. If you are a composer, there are new skills needed. And for senior leaders, for senior professionals, they already have these skills because senior leaders are already used to composing. They just compose through teams of people historically, not through AI. But these management skills have to become everyone's skills. And the organizations that were seeing 3x, 4x multipliers were the ones that were creating these skills across their organization, embedding them at all levels. First, very quickly, product literacy. Not prompt engineering, but more fundamental, the design, the ability to communicate and describe both what and why a thing, a feature, a marketing campaign, whatever it is that you're doing is needed, how it's going to be used, who's going to be using it. I understand like the design thinking capabilities, all the stuff that we put into that product bucket becomes an everyone skill. The second is judgment. Right? The ability to apply, and more importantly, the skill, the confidence to apply that judgment. For those of you who know Lean, you might be familiar with the and-on cord, right? The cord that stops the production line. Right? That cord, not only can anyone pull it, they must. Doesn't matter how junior or senior you are, you must pull that cord if you see an issue. And if you make a mistake, you're not penalized, you are rewarded. Right? Even though pulling that line costs the organization money. Because if you are afraid to pull that cord, right, if you're afraid of making a mistake, right, and you do see an issue that isn't stopped, that will cause the organization a hell of a lot more money. Right? And so that confidence to apply judgment, to overrule the AI system. And the last one, and in the next version of this, we're going to be renaming feedback loops to quality control or something like that. But as a creator, the first act of quality happens during the act of creation. Oh, I don't like that line, delete, try something else. It's an implicit activity. As a composer, the first act of quality is explicit, right? And that is a different skill. And one of the big issues that we have with a junior workforce, right, who are being told use AI and being taught prompt engineering and so forth, is no one's teaching them that the difference between implicit and explicit quality control. And so we're getting a lot of, I saw a term this morning, work slop, like AI work slop. And it's coming out, not because AI is bad or it's not being used correctly, but because the skills, the complementary skills beyond just prompt engineering and writing AI stuff is lacking in the majority of organizations. So on that, I'm going to leave one slide up, hint, hint, while we ask any questions. You know, I'll leave that slide up because it's got the same link. There we go. Hint, hint, any questions? Comments, thoughts?
So it doesn't matter what size organization a person participates in to take the survey. Did I get that right?
So we actually have trends for like if you're a sole proprietor, I mean, it does. I mean, there's going to be a problem, but we've got data down as low as 5, 10 people. That's fine.
Across all of this over the last few years, where have you seen the needle move the most?
That's a broad question. So
Intentionally broad. Sorry if it's too broad, but
it's okay. It's okay. So couple of key shifts. So we spoke about trust at the very beginning, and the trends of business agility follow the trends of trust. So for example, and I'm going to show you a slide I didn't show earlier, which was this one. So we've seen a steady increase in agility over the last, well, 7 odd years. Organizations just getting better at some of these core capabilities, core behaviors. Right? We saw a massive dip in 2023. And when we looked at what that dip, and I should note, we saw increases through the pandemic, even though, and this is a time of massive disruption, but that's kind of the point. These organizations everyone's worked from home. You need to be autonomous. You need to be you need to have personal accountability. Leaders were forced to be agile. Right? They were forced to be effective leaders for a change. They couldn't just walk the office and go, "What are you doing?" No, no, I'm working on something else. It became harder. So levels of agility, levels of trust across, and trust goes both ways. Trust to the organization. Even if you got laid off, right? Even if you lost your job during the pandemic, you knew why. I mean, it was a shame, it was bad, but we were all in this together, right? Come 2023, the pandemic's over, organizations start enforcing return to work orders. They start to, like Microsoft lays off 10,000 people. No, it's more than that. Like the massive sweeping rounds of layoffs, all that trust, all that leadership, the accountability and the autonomy and the empowerment that had been given, taken away. Right? I mean, not quite I mean, it happened somewhat gradually, but throughout the course of 22 and 23, that was the shift. And so there was this fundamental breakdown in trust between, in both directions, right? I don't trust you as a worker. I don't know you're working from home. I don't know, I want you in the office so I can see you working. And the individual's trust of, we were told we were going to work from home forever, that this was great, that this was the new normal. And how many times do we hear the term the new normal? Right? And the breakdown of trust happened both ways. And so the global trends for business agility followed the trends of trust. 2024 saw a rebound. Organizations overcorrected and then started to go, oh, hey, no, we were wrong. Like, things started to stabilize a little bit. So we saw greater levels of autonomy. I would also say that regional trends do matter. Sorry to say it, US is steadily dropping when it comes to the level of agility in US organizations. Asia, specifically Southeast Asia, the Middle East have already overtaken you in terms of capabilities. Again, these are trends, these are averages. Specific companies vary. Latin America is still behind, but the fastest growing. The level of agility in a lot of the LATAM. So I was in Peru last year for the Business Agility Conference, and it was impressive. I'll be blunt, these are companies, they're trying to leapfrog 20 years of OD. They don't have some of that heritage and some of the bureaucracy like anchors. They're going from chaotic to agility versus where the US and Europe went from chaotic to controlled to agility. They're kind of skipping that middle piece. Again, global trends, industry specific companies always vary.
It's interesting to see how that was going to work out in terms of spiral dynamics, like you were talking about earlier. I'd love to see what that is. That's a different topic of conversation.
Yeah. I don't have time to get into it because I could take 3 hours on it. But if we look at it by capability, there are also very, very different trends. So I was just talking about the overall average of all those capabilities. If we look at it, for example, around leadership, right? Whilst LATAM is fastest growing, their leadership capabilities haven't been keeping up. And if we know about theory of constraints, we know that's going to be a problem, because that's going to constrain these ambitions of these organizations. If we look at, say, for example, I was talking about this just before, the Middle East, especially, say, the Dubai government. I was there literally last week, and the sheer investment in customer centricity, citizen centricity from all levels of government. And I work with a lot of organizations. I know when someone is, I'm not going to swear, telling a lie. I'm Australian, we swear. So my BS meter is pretty good, but seriously, what they're doing, and it is a firmly held belief that they exist to serve in the government. And in the last 10 years, the investment in customer citizen centricity, it puts Australia, it puts everywhere to shame. And don't get me wrong, government usually scores highly on customer centricity because government and NGOs have a natural kind of like their service focused. So they always score high. But I mean, it's next level over there.
Yeah, so
So there are these
green
massive
close to teal kind of thing.
in that domain, because I wouldn't
domain,
necessarily put
right.
their operations are their government bureaucracy up the wazoo. So they're flexible. So it's a huge variance between operations and customer centricity. They've got the culture, but not the systems. So yeah, so it's about where the imbalances across organizations lie.
Yeah, I think I
Mo.
see. Yeah, Mo is next. Yep.
Thank you. I found my hand. Um, so, so Evan, right now, at this end, we have AI on the brain, but there's no governance, there's no guidance, and there's this overwhelming sense of fear in how it's going to impact the organization. I'm not sure if this is a question or if I just want your thoughts, since you're so embedded in organizations. What are your thoughts on how AI is going to radically change the landscape as we know it now? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, and they're not all good. So I don't wear a tinfoil hat. I broadly believe that, like most innovations that precede it, AI is going to create more value than it destroys. There are some individuals, absolutely, who will lose their jobs. But the question is how much agility do they have? How quickly can they retool, regear? There'll be more opportunities. The I think organizations are they're realizing what was hype and what is real. And so some of the statements of we're going to replace all of our developers with AI is like, no, hang on, no, AI doesn't work that. And one of the reasons why AI is bad for automation is AI is a non-deterministic system. You pull a lever, something happens. You pull the same lever, something else happens, a different thing, right? Automation requires a deterministic system. The same thing happens every single time. And so that's one of the I think the aha moments that are happening with organizations, that realism. But I do think it will massively change a vast number of industries. Now, this is where I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on, right? Because this is the thing that scares me, and it scares me partly because I've got the data. What AI does well today is the kind of work that is traditionally assigned to junior associates, junior consultants or accountants, junior like legal associates and so forth. Right? It's how they learn the ropes. It's how they learn their industry. Now, we're already seeing this. So there was a report that came, or an article that came out a few months ago, not about AI specifically, but a similar, which is around robotic surgery assistants. That it basically said that patient outcomes, the health of a patient, is better when you have a senior surgeon assisted by a robot versus a senior surgeon assisted by a junior surgeon. Now, as a patient, I want the best patient outcomes. Of course I do, right? And so give me the robot. But then where is the next generation of senior surgeons coming from? And this is already happening in India. The IPPs, Indian pure play consulting providers, Wipro and so forth. The way they recruit is they just go to a university and say, everyone in this batch, everyone in this year gets a job offer, or everyone who graduates at a certain level gets a job offer. No interviews. Everyone just joins the company if they want to. They just hire the entire batch. And so people go into university believing that, well, as long as I do okay, I got a job. They stop doing that because they don't need as many associates anymore. They don't need as many of the junior staff members anymore. So we're entering into a situation where the how we think about education, how we think about careers and career development is I won't say under threat, because this is where my tinfoil hat comes in. I think it's already been executed. I think it's gone. It's just flopping around. The limbs are moving. There's some twitching. We just haven't quite realized that no, it's already dead. And this is what scares me, because this is going to require, this isn't a company thing. This is a government and tertiary in education plus company plus corporation, cultural, this is a society level change that's going to have to happen. Right? That's where my tinfoil hat sits. In terms of an individual's job, and their fear, we've got the data. The demand for people who are cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, people who are who have good communication skills, people who have that, all those jigsaw puzzles that I showed at the very, very beginning. There's demand for them. Right? The job titles might change, but there's demand for them. So we are in a transition period. There's going to be difficulty. Some people will lose, but society as a large it will be a net benefit once we figure out the career progression, once we figure out the transition from junior to senior, because that apprentice model of we're going to learn on the job is not going to work anymore, because there is no learning on the job. There won't be junior surgeons, there won't be junior consultants, junior accountants, junior lawyers. They won't exist. Not in the same way.
It sounds like there needs to be a values change to some degree with some of these corporate offices associated with that. Okay, Pritz. Yeah. Pritz.
Yeah, Evan, I've been listening attentively to what you're saying. And the example you gave of the DBS bank was very interesting. I'm going to bring up one word you haven't mentioned yet, which is regulation. The the government, the reason I mention that is that banking is very heavily regulated. They want to make sure banks don't go bust and they don't steal your money. So, but the other thing is in something like healthcare and in surgery and that kind of stuff, there are rules for how work is performed. And I was fascinated by your idea that the organization can only be as agile as its least effective, least agile part, right? So, you done much work with insurance companies?
Oh, yes. So I'm just trying to find, we were commissioned to do a piece of work for, I'm going to be careful because we were commissioned to do a piece. So there's an organization in Europe, financial services, that's currently overseen by the regulator, is about to become regulated by the regulator. They're a global provider of a core banking piece of infrastructure for every bank around the world. Okay. They commissioned us to do a piece of research that was literally on agility. Like, how do we retain our agility in a regulated environment? Now, what we found, and I'm trying to see if I've got one that doesn't have the company name on it. Sorry, just bear with me.
Well, let me slide in some more of the question. So I don't know how much you know about healthcare in the United States, but the sacred relationship between the doctor and the patient is governed by the insurance company. And the insurance company has its own relationship with the government and the society, if that makes sense, right?
No.
So the somebody just put HIPAA in, but I worked on a project where dealing with agility was kind of silly, because they had all these rules they were trying to stitch together to make a working computer system. It was not a recipe for successful agile. However, the insurance company was interested and the C-suite was interested you were correct. Their activities, their behaviors modeled what you were saying about them being the most agile group. The problem was that the systems couldn't move fast enough. And between the regulation and the security requirements, things did not move quickly. All right, I'll stop.
No,
Thank you.
I've just taken a screenshot of the report. I mean, it's ugly, and you may not be able to read it that well, but we found 7 key findings. So we interviewed a lot of heavily regulated organizations to understand how they handle this. Now, the first thing that I will highlight that's not on this list, because they asked us to take it off, was that internal compliance is not the same as regulatory compliance. Your internal, a bank or insurance companies or a healthcare organization's internal compliance function is almost always, well, their KPIs don't get sued, don't get fined, right? So often they'll say no, when if you go talk to the regulator just goes, yeah, of course you can, just make sure you do 1, 2, 3 things, right? So we looked at how, okay, so the compliance, if you want agility, compliance activities need to be integrated across the organization, not just centralized. And we often talk about shift left compliance, right? There has to be some centralized compliance that handle the standards so that those embedded compliance individuals they don't go rogue, but there's got to be sort of that federated, integrated approach. You've got to be able to forecast, as in the regulations change. So the better your strategic agility, the better your agility in general, the better you are able to go, oh, hang on. So one of the capabilities, sense and respond proactively. That's the capability that we measure. And this forecasting avoids firefighting is basically sense and respond. You've got to sense and respond the regulator. Technical health. I mean, you can get dinged for systems out of compliance. So you basically, if all the priorities are feature after feature after feature and tech debt is not addressed, or org debt is not addressed, you're going to get pinged. So you got to get, those have to be treated as interconnected. My favorite, accountability, budget, and decision authority in one role. So one of the organizations that we studied, actually no, one example from one of the organizations that we interviewed was that the CIO was accountable for certain regulatory compliance, but the budget sat with the product, and the decision for what was being worked on sat with a committee. So this accountable owner, who was accountable from a compliance standpoint, couldn't make a decision about what to work on and didn't have the budget to apply. And all the product teams, they just wanted their features, right? And so well, the organization that we interviewed they had 58 out of compliance systems, and were threatened with a massive regulatory fine unless they were brought into line. And so they basically said, okay, they took the budget from the business, they took the budget, sorry, they took decision from the committee and said, you are accountable, make it happen. And they did it in 6 months, didn't get fined, right? And then, yeah, automation doesn't scale work. So if there are things that from a compliance standpoint, think of these as the enabling constraint, right? This is a constraint that every other regulated organization has, right? There's no agility needed. There's no creativity. It is, you do this, you do it this way, right? So automate the damn thing so there is no human in the loop, right? Your competitive advantage is not there. So make sure it just never breaks. Automate the damn thing. And my favorite, controls exist to manage anxiety. Sorry, controls exist to manage risk, not anxiety. And this goes to that earlier point around compliance, the internal compliance functions, where a lot of the controls leaders are worried. And this was the problem with this organization, where suddenly they're getting regulated and all their executives are scared, right? And so they're putting in place these controls that are far in excess of what the regulator requires, because they're scared. They're anxious about what it means. Right? When the reality is that if we look at the actual risk and what the compliance, what the regulator needs, is not even close. I mean, it's so far less than what they're putting into place. So we do a lot of work in healthcare. We've got data from hundreds of healthcare organizations. We've studied them, insurance organizations, banking, telecoms, you name it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you
Right,
very
let's-
much. And this
yeah,
has
one
been
last
a
question.
very helpful,
Yeah.
very enlightening talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Adam's the last person. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, just a couple of quick anecdotes to add to what you were saying with respect to AI. The first being related to healthcare, that right now there are a number of high-profile lawsuits as a
Yep.
result of the decisioning of allowing AI to do decisioning that have actually resulted in fatalities. That's one aspect. And another interesting aspect, this was more public perception than professional.
Yeah, that's different.
Then I'll put the name of the group in the chat. There's a Dutch band called Within Temptation that did the first music video, all Gen AI music video. The music wasn't just the visuals. And they got such a backlash from their fans about you're taking jobs away from people and this, and you're taking other artists' work and stuff like that, that they actually had to put up their own response to that. And they said, actually, we had to hire more people to do this video than we would have had with a traditional music video.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I found that
And that's
pretty
part of
interesting.
the issue of those lawsuits, and so AI for automation, bad idea. Right? Do not take the human out of the loop. Right? The human has a new role and so forth, and this is where the judgment comes into play. So decision assistance, decision support systems have been around for 30 years. That's not a new technology, right? Tagging them as AI, I mean, and there's new elements of that, sure. But those insurance companies have been using DSS for decades, right? But what the mistake is being made is, oh, well, these aren't support systems, these are decision replacement systems. I don't know. There's not a name for them, I just made that up. But the key is that these systems can help with making decisions rather than necessarily being the right things to make the decisions in the first place. So
Yes.
that's part of where that augmentation rather than automation comes into play.
It's Evan.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Thanks. Yeah.
I liken it a lot to what we experienced here in the US in the late 90s, early 2000s with HMOs, where they had non-medical personnel making decisions on medical procedures, which basically wiped out all but the last couple of standing HMOs in the country.
Awesome conversation, folks. Evan, thank you so much for your time. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm looking forward to actually going back and listening to it again.
Yes.
Love some of the references too that you're bringing in. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to the 2025 report when it comes out. So yeah, let's get on those surveys, folks. All right.
Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. And please reach out to me if you have further questions. Always happy to chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Be well, everybody. Hope you had a good time. Enjoyed it.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
Evan.
everyone.
All the
Thank you.
best. Yep.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks.
interesting.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye, guys.